Hello, welcome back to the channel. And well, one good thing, one bad thing. Good thing, I'm actually stood in a unit that we've got some sort of shared space within, so absolutely going to be ideal for doing some of the work to the cars. And then on the flip side of that, the bad thing, the Corsa again. So unfortunately, we've had some comeback on this. We've done water pump and that stuff. It's not solved the engine issues on it, so we're going to be delving into a bit of an engine swap by the looks of it. So we're just looking to try and solve something at the minute. We've got this car here ready to go. We'll prep it today, pull the front bumper off, any accessories, probably the airbox and battery tray, and yeah, other than that, it's going to be engine out, and hopefully next week we'll have another donor car or a second-hand engine, and we'll be putting that in there. But yeah, wasn't expecting to see this one back on the channel, but hey ho, it's here, and it's a bit more for us to do and learn, I guess. And main thing is just making sure that we get it right, get it back on the road, and make sure there's no issues with this, because yeah, one thing we don't want to be doing is moving cars onto people, especially family members, and them having issues. So we're doing all we can here just to make this as perfect as it can be for the car that it is. But yeah, with that all said, we're going to get cracking with this now. We'll see where we get to. Okay, so the first step for us was taking it off that front bumper. Basically what we want to be doing is stripping down the complete front end, make it as easy as possible to get access to that engine. It's not a big engine, it's just a 1.4 in this, and obviously it's front wheel drive as well, so we have got that gearbox to bear in mind as well there. But once we've freed up that space, it should be really easy for us to access any engine mounts, gearbox mounts, and actually get an engine crane in there to lift the engine out as well. And at that stage, it was going to be a case of, right, what are we going to decide to do? Depending on the donor vehicle or engine, would depend on how much we take out. Do we take out the engine and gearbox, or are we just literally doing a engine swap? So in terms of the actual front bumper coming off and the headlights, it was really easy. As you can see, it was done in no time at all. And then the next stage here is just taking out the crash bars. So again, pretty straightforward. We've done this on a few cars now where we've had to repair damage. This one wasn't a damaged repaired car. This was a repossession, so there's nothing to do in terms of bodywork as such on this, and no parts to replace, or so we thought, of course. But main thing on this was making sure we was disconnecting the wiring and we was capturing where that wiring was going. So obviously when it comes to putting this back together, we knew exactly where the looms ran and what plugged into where, which is pretty easy, to be fair, because most wiring looms, your plugs will only go in one place anyway. And with the length of the actual looms themselves as well, it's pretty obvious as to where they need to connect in. However, the way they're ran can sometimes be difficult. So definitely something that's worth taking a few pictures of and making note of in terms of where things like the clips plug in. So you do run it in the exact position that it came out. And moving on to now the battery, once we'd stripped that off, this was actually really difficult to figure out how to get the battery and the battery tray out. So it took a bit of head scratching, but hopefully me kind of highlighting a few little bits on here now can show you guys how to do this if you do need to do a battery swap on your Corsa, and sort of identifies what you need to undo. So there's a couple of sort of almost hidden bolts, if you like, at the bottom there that then allow you to release the battery from the tray, and then underneath that are your actual fixings for the battery tray into the engine bay itself. Then with that all stripped out, and Cal having taken out the airbox on the opposite side, you can now really see how much room you've got to work with. We did end up leaving in the actual rad pack just in case we did need to move the car. So obviously we'd still have the cooling system connected, but that would only be quite a quick job when we do need to pull that out. And at this stage, we still wasn't sure what we was going to get, whether we was going to get a donor car or a donor engine. But unfortunately, when it all came to it, we wasn't able to get anything or source anything at the time that would have come to us quick enough for a reasonable price. When I was looking at stuff on Copart, because of the cost of the delivery, it really bumps the cost of the actual car if we was to get a donor car right up. So it kind of took that out of the equation for us, and it was back to the drawing board, and it ended up being that we ended up sourcing someone local to us that could basically give us a reconditioned engine as a trade-in. And ultimately, that was also going to be the quickest and fastest way that would get this car back on the road for the new owner. And that would also give us some guarantees. So there was like a 6-month warranty with that. So not any more to sort of show on the channel, unfortunately, on this one. Other than what I want to run through now is kind of the costs and show you kind of something behind what you see on the front end here with the works that we're actually doing. And one thing I always do try and do is create a bit of a spreadsheet before buying any of the cars, and that then kind of allows us to forecast things. But I will say my forecasts so far have been horrendous. So yeah, let's kind of show you through this, show you where we've got to on this Corsa project, the ultimate cost that it has been to us, what we've sold it for, and where we stand with this and a couple of other cars that you would have seen on the channel. Okay, so I wanted to run through something that I tend to do for all the cars that are on the channel, and it's a bit of a spreadsheet. So I've got some gaps in here, and I'm basically going to show you costs as we go through this. But initially, what I wanted to start with was the cost of the actual vehicle itself. This is the total cost that the Vauxhall Corsa was to us from Synetic. As I say, this was a repossession, wasn't a crash damaged car. So this was bought as a repossession, and we bidded up, or Carl bidded on this one, up to 2,770. Actually bidded a little bit more, but we got credited back because when the vehicle came, Carl actually noticed there was an issue. It was not actually advertised and wasn't shown in any of the pictures. A gear knob, so I'll just put that in here now. So the actual gear knob had some damage on there, and fair play to them, Synetic give us £50 back, which would cover the cost of a second-hand one, and we actually managed to basically buy one even cheaper than that. So it was a win-win for us. Now, with us paying up to that kind of costing, what we estimated the actual value of the vehicle would be was £4,500 sale. Obviously, there's no category on this car, so that's sale as a straight car with, I think this one had around 66,000 miles on the clock. So we was basically just basing that price off other vehicles that are already on the market on Auto Trader, and I think that's kind of the best way that you can do it. Obviously, if you're a private seller, you're erring on the caution of you're going to sell it for less because you've not got the ability to provide finance. And also with the warranty side of things, it's a lot harder to organise that. It can be done as a private seller, but obviously businesses, it makes life a lot easier for the person buying from them. So you do have to value your vehicle lower than what it would be in a showroom to compensate for that. But we felt at £4,500, with being the limited edition model, ours would be the best spec Vauxhall Corsa at the time for that price. Now, what I try to do is kind of forecast what we will be pricing up and what we will be looking at changing. So there's the MOT cost, there's tyres, because I assumed it would need tyres. I think Carl noted that to me, or it said in the description or something. Windscreen wipers were just one that I thought it could need, so I thought I'll put the price of them in there. An aerial, we knew the aerial was snapped, so we put the price in there. One win that we did get on that is we managed to buy one for less than the 20 quid that I projected. It was a second-hand unit, and then because it was actually the aerial stock, we actually managed to sell the base as well for virtually the same price that we paid for a new stock and base. So it's a great one that we basically spent no money fixing that problem and managed to recycle parts, so a win-win. In terms of the back passenger light, so we knew that was damaged and needed to be replaced. There's not LEDs or anything like that, it's just bulbs, so it's a case of just getting the actual casing itself, and that came in lower as well than what we anticipated originally. Now, another bit of damage that we weren't necessarily aware of, but we didn't get anything for it in terms of like a reimbursement or anything like that from Synetic. I think it might have been on the description or might have been in a picture, so we just missed that one, and that's things that you're going to have to sort of take on the chin, unfortunately, when you are buying from Synetic Copart. There are going to be things that you're not necessarily going to notice, but ultimately the cost of that, because we did it ourselves, was just over £150 altogether, with the sealant, with the removal kit, and the second-hand windscreen that we got as well. Now, going forwards, I would probably leave this to the professionals, just because for another £100 it probably could have been done a lot quicker, and obviously we wouldn't have had to spend the time on it and things like that, and it would have been a brand new windscreen rather than a second-hand one. But it was really good to give it a go, and we have got a video of doing that on the channel, so if you do want to go watch that, click on the link in the description. In terms of other parts that we didn't sort of know that was going to need, but we found out during the MOT, so it actually didn't go through its first MOT, and these parts were the tailgate wiring loom, which again, there's a video on that, and yeah, there's a whole story behind that, and it's probably one of the most common
problems or faults on the Corsas. So if you are having an issue with your lights at the back not illuminating, or if there's anything else wrong with your electrical system around that, then it's most probably going to be the wiring loom. So do take a look at that. In terms of the actual cost for the total, it cost us around £180 to get it through the MOT essentially. So that was the cost of the anti-roll bar linkages, and then also the cost of the front brakes and discs. And then we also had a little bit of an issue with the thermostat housing just slightly weeping. We did buy the gasket kit, but we actually found we didn't need it. We could just clean up the actual surfaces, and it reseated and resealed. So that was a good win. And then there was a tire inflator kit, just something we didn't have when ours came, that we wanted to make sure that we got to put in the car. So obviously a lot of cars don't come with spare wheels now, so it really is essential that you do have the inflator kit essentially, just in case you do have a puncture and it leaves you at the side of the road. Then moving on to fees. So in terms of advertisement, we did put this up for sale, and we advertised it on Auto Trader as well as eBay. Now the costs for Auto Trader have gone up substantially since this, and it was around, sort of, as you can see there, £60 mark then. I think you're at about £100, and then even more, it depending on the value of the vehicle that you're advertising. So do bear in mind the cost of actually advertising a vehicle. And then also, you're pretty standard on this. eBay advertising fee 30 days is 20 quid, and it doesn't really change that. But obviously, if you do then need to extend it, then it's 20 quid every month that you do need that extension for. And now I'm coming back to the issue in this video and the costs of that. So initially, when we had a look at it, we thought we might be able to diagnose the engine issue with a replacement gasket and actually get the water pump done at the same time and giving it a good service. So spark plugs, coil, pack, all that sort of stuff. And that cost just under £500 to have all that work done. Now, that lessened the problem initially, but then the problem came back 10 times worse. So that was when we knew that there was further issues with the engine, and then that's when it really sort of hit us. At this stage here, we're still kind of in the profit margin for the sale of the car. So the actual sale cost of the car at 4,400, so just £100 shy of where we were hoping to get with it. But that gave us a good healthy profit there of just over £500, until obviously we hit the issue with the engine and it came back to us again. Now, what we ended up doing, as I say, was getting this engine reconditioned, and then with all the extras, that ended up being quite a hefty bill. So we're at near enough £2,250 there just in that, and that has obviously completely wiped us out. We've gone from having a £250 budget on this build to having in excess of £3,000, meaning our profit margin basically got knocked out. And we had a hefty loss on this one for such a low value vehicle. So this is definitely not what you want to be seeing. And the main thing for us was just making sure that this car was right for the person, the new owner, and we did all we could to satisfy them. It was off the road for obviously the time it took for us to get this fixed, but the new owner has now had that vehicle since the reconditioned engine has been fitted for a good 3-4 months, because it was quite a while back now when we actually did this works, and they've had no issues, and that's what we want ultimately. So yeah, just a bit of a flag there to give you the true costs of this project and sort of highlight what you do need to consider, what you do need to look at when you're buying or thinking of doing something like this. And as I say, this wasn't even a written off car, this was a repossession. So theoretically, there should be nothing near that cost for this kind of project. But that doesn't even take into account the hours worked on it as well. So another thing I want to highlight to everyone is, even if we'd have made the profit of £500, the time that me and Cal spent on the vehicle, although it wasn't a long time, it would have been maybe 2-3 full days for both of us working on it. It's still £500 for that amount of time. You can earn that in your day job. So, but that's not what it's all about for us. At the end of the day, what we did with this was a bit of a trial run to see whether there was a business potential going forward. We have now learnt from the mistake that we've made on this one and a couple of other cars. Unfortunately, they didn't get to where we wanted them to be, but that has made us refocus on cars that we want to be keeping, or at least driving, for a good amount of time before we move them on. So that moves me on to a couple of the older projects. and you would have seen the XJ on the channel. If you haven't, go and have a look at that. I'll leave a link in the description. And yeah, that was a big loss, and unfortunately I did have to sell that on. That one, again, very similar sort of loss on that one, and didn't get anything out of it, no joy out of it at all, so really gutted on that one. I'm not going to dwell on that any longer. But on the flip side, the first actual car that we bought from Copart, which was just over a year ago now, was an Audi S5. Now this was bought for Carl's son, and it was a fantastic buy. The actual costs I've not calculated in here because the costs of all the work, basically Carl did them. There's no funding or no need for me to knock these in because it wasn't a cost for me, and it wasn't something that was going to be looking at moving on anytime soon or anything like that. But the actual vehicle we bought was a really lovely Audi S5. Again, I have done a video on this, so if you do want to have a look at that, I'll put the link in the description. And it was I believe, 2-owner car. Absolutely immaculate when it came, really good spec. It's one of the V8 S5s as well before they changed engines to the V6s, so one of the better engines. And for a total price of 3,500 or just over, what a purchase that is, what a car that is. And I would say there was less than £1,000 spent on that to get it to where it needed to be. So fantastic buy, and we kind of expected it to be valued at sort of 8,000. That's bearing in mind it had a category on it as well. So probably was thinking around 10,000 if it was a straight car, looking at selling it. So if you just look at the potential profit that was in that one, was really, really good. But as I say, you don't always get that, so do bear in mind. And yeah, hopefully this has kind of helped a few people sort of understand what goes on behind the scenes, the costings of things, and also, as I say, I've not even highlighted it in this, the actual man hours that go onto these projects, building them, and the cost of that as well should also be considered. But hope you've enjoyed this content, a bit different to normal. We'll get back to the normal stuff in the next video. If you do like this content on the pricing side, then do let me know in the comments, and I'll try and make a video on every car that we get, regardless of whether we're looking to sell it or not. And thank you, as always, guys, for all the support and watching. If you could hit that like and subscribe, it'd be really, really appreciated. And I'll see you on the next one.